I served my enchanting queen and forged victory in ways her enemies could never compare. We needed warriors who would not falter. I stole binding rights older than myself or my queen, but Bone would not answer me. So I bound souls to armor instead.
So if you've been living under a rock in Sea of Thieves recently, and honestly, after 4 seasons of story content that mostly boiled down to ticking off forgettable commendations, you might have completely missed that there's actually been a story unfolding in the background. And I don't blame you. Most of it involved helping the smugglers, or smacking purple emos with your sword, and wondering if this was all building towards something, or if Rare had simply discovered the world's longest loading screen. But buried underneath all of that was the gradual reveal of the Dark Brethren. They're essentially a collection of outcasts who looked at the Sea of Thieves, collectively sighed, and decided, fine, we'll do it ourselves. The group consisted of the Gold Hoarder, who's dead, probably. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. Davy Jones, who is now spending eternity on the Ferry of the Damned after the whole Tall Tale incident. Wanda, better known as the Warsmith, formerly known as the Masked Stranger. Our beloved Duke, the Siren Queen, and, of course, the one seemingly pulling all the strings, the mysterious Captain, who's yet to make an appearance. Although, if we're being cynical, that's probably because Season 19 got de-scoped, and I'm willing to bet that's exactly where he was supposed to show up. Duke, meanwhile, has spent the last couple of seasons drip-feeding us little nuggets about the Dark Brethren. He's basically become the face of the smugglers now, and has dedicated an impressive amount of effort trying to convince us they're not actually evil, just misunderstood. Sorry, Duke. Trying to tear down the walls of reality, murder the ferryman, put Davy Jones in charge, and condemn everyone to an eternal servitude isn't exactly a PR problem. That's less misunderstood, and more should probably be supervised. Still, whether they're villains or visionaries isn't really the point. After 2 seasons of Duke pacing around like a motivational speaker who desperately wanted us to join his book club, something finally happened. We met the Masked Stranger. Again, except she's not really masked anymore, and she's definitely not much of a stranger. Once you've completed every commendation from Season 17 and 18, and sacrificed enough hours of your life to make you question your own sanity, one of the smugglers, Lottie, hands you a special voyage of sorts. It sends you to a mysterious locked door atop the Arena Tavern, and after what has to be the politest whisper ever uttered through a keyhole, the door unlocks, and standing before you is the Warsmith herself. Ironically, she's probably the only Sea of Thieves character whose story actually exists in the Sea of Thieves, rather than being scattered across novels, comics, and that one obscure bit of lore that someone found down the back of their sofa. She reveals that through all of the Dark Brethren's meddling, and with a little help from us after recovering something called a Wayfinder from one of the new garrisons, they've managed to locate another orb. Now, we already know Flameheart possesses one. That orb isn't some magical paperweight. Inside is the Widow, an ancient from a forgotten age who's basically been whispering into Flameheart's ear ever since he locked his son out of the family business. But the Warsmith has found another. This one contains a being known as the Soulsmith. And that's where things get really interesting. The Soulsmith is essentially responsible for everything tied to soul magic within the Sea of Thieves, whether intentionally or accidentally. His influence can be traced back to almost every soul curse we've encountered. He's also the one who created the Eternal Guard. The problem was, in creating them, he corrupted the very magic he was using, ultimately giving rise to the Skeletal Plague. At that point, the good ancients, the ones who weren't purple and trying to end existence every other Tuesday, finally decided enough was enough. So they imprisoned these corrupted ancients inside magical orbs and created one enormous barrier to ensure none of them could ever escape the Sea of Thieves. And this explains something that has never been explained in the Sea of Thieves before. Today, we know that barrier as the Shroud. But the Soulsmith and others never gave up trying to escape. For centuries, they searched for a way beyond the Shroud, beyond the confines of these seas. And thanks to the Warsmith, the Dark Brethren, and whether we like it or not, us, that location has finally been uncovered. It's sitting there in plain sight, right behind the Warsmith, pinned to the map. So where is this location actually in the game? Well, judging by the map, the break in the Shroud is roughly between Smuggler's Bay and Old Faithful Isle, around the upper middle of the map, which means it's basically around the Coral Fortress. Now, before anyone asks, yes, I checked. I sailed around it, searched every rock, I poked every suspicious looking bit of scenery, and unless the entrance is hidden behind an unpaid parking ticket, nothing has changed yet. But the important part isn't whether we can access it right now, it's that it exists. The passage beyond the Sea of Thieves is now part of the story, and until this point, the Dark Brethren were seemingly the only people who knew where it was, so it stands to reason they've been using it for quite some time. Now, let's rewind back to Christmas 2025 and those mysterious orb teasers Rare showed during the Sea of Thieves live streams. At the time, they didn't really make much sense. We knew they were teasing 2026 story, but with the recent lore drop, we've only really scratched the surface of what they were hinting at. One thing that did become clear was that this mysterious captain has been communicating with the Grand Maritime Union outside of the Sea of Thieves for a long time. In fact, I'm starting to wonder whether he actually works for them. The last time we heard from him was during the Pirates Life tool Theives, where he spoke about a rather important trinket he'd given to the Dark Brethren, a relic capable of traveling between worlds. Unfortunately for him, Jack Sparrow promptly stole it and disappeared into the sunset aboard the Black Pearl because, well, that's sort of Jack Sparrow's entire personality. The captain's plan was simple. Once the coast was clear and the trinket was recovered, he'd sail for the Sea of Thieves. Except that never happened. Now, though, he may not even need it, because if there's now a permanent route through the Shroud, that changes everything, and not in a spooky ghost story kind of a way, more of a HM Revenue and Customs has finally found your hidden offshore account kind of way. Up until now, the Grand Maritime Union has never been able to establish a proper foothold inside the Sea of Thieves. The Merchant Alliance was founded by former GMU members, and the Sovereigns have always felt suspiciously corporate. They're essentially acting as envoys, quietly preparing the ground. But moving a handful of representatives around is one thing. Sailing an entire fleet through the Shroud, that's another entirely. If this breach is large enough for proper ships to pass through, then the age of completely free piracy could genuinely be coming to an end. But of course, there's another possibility. Maybe we'll be the one sailing through. Perhaps this is how Rare introduces completely new regions outside of the Sea of Thieves. New oceans, new kingdoms, the real world beyond the Shroud. It's possible. Personally, though, I don't think that's where this is heading. Everything we've learned so far points towards an invasion, not a sightseeing tour. And honestly, that sounds far more interesting. Yes, it's taken much longer than any of us hoped, but for the first time in a long while, it genuinely feels like the pieces are finally starting to move. And there's another detail that backs this up. A new representative has quietly appeared at Port Merrick, working alongside the Sovereigns. She does an absolutely terrible job of pretending she isn't connected to them, whilst conveniently standing nearby a note revealing that Admiral Caspian has ordered her to be here and is on his way. Very subtle. Now, all of this sounds fantastic. It really does. The lore is finally connecting together, threads that have been dangling for years are beginning to overlap, and for once it feels like the story is building towards something genuinely massive. But we've been here before. So the question is this actually setting up season 21, or are we about to get another season where Duke spends 6 weeks reassuring us that everyone simply misunderstood while we collect 17 slightly different colored crates? Because if this really is the beginning of the Grand Maritime Union's arrival, that's incredibly exciting. If, on the other hand, season 21 ends up being another quality of life update, or a few more improvements to custom seas, and another slow drip of story that goes nowhere, I think that will be the point where a lot of players simply stop waiting. Rare have done the hard part. They've got the people talking again, they've got the community theorizing, and now they just have to stick the landing. So Rare, the ball is very much in your court. Anyway, that should get you completely up to speed with everything that's happening right now within the game. Thanks for watching, everyone, and if you enjoyed this little dive into the lore, don't forget to flick that like button and give that subscribe button a gentle tickle, and I'll catch you all very soon. Happy sailing!